design process reimagined. Let's see how AI can feature in the design thinking lifecycle. Not having access to users is an everyday struggle in the life of most design teams. I don't foresee simulated empathy replacing users altogether. I do see it filling the gaps and identifying obvious and anticipated risks. In addition to existing tools, I predict that we'll soon be able to configure, interview, and save virtual users that embody real customer data. AI-assisted discovery can feed into data-driven problem statements. Comparing and crunching historic data into solvable problems can settle discussions on design priority and rapidly drive meaningful changes. You can argue with hypothesis or opinion, but you can't deny cold, hard facts. AI tools can translate intangible matters into real design JIRA tickets. Now, when we get to ideation, imagine supercharging your ideation phase. You can run a Google Design sprint in a day, quickly summoning solutions out of thin air at little to no cost or risk. And let's address the elephant in the room. AI does not replace designers. It empowers designers to unleash their creativity instead of pixel pushing. For prototyping, with smart prototyping features like auto-generating micro interactions and system feedback, you can fail fast and learn fast, as the saying goes. Furthermore, automated testing can detect the small snags up front. You know, those niggly bits we only ever realize in real life user testing sessions. Yes, it happens to all of us. This can save time and avoid distractions during valuable face-to-face time with users. Challenges and growing pains aside, the ability of AI to speed up high-fidelity designs is remarkable. Let's push the limits here. Imagine a brand personality as a learning interactive entity. It can act on a set of brand values and live by your company's vision. This can ensure consistency in tone and always be available to advise. Imagine being able to ask your brand how it would respond in certain scenarios and how it's positioned in relation to your competitors. If this doesn't exist yet, we need to build it. Talking about tools and application, AI can automate repetitive and mundane tasks, freeing up human workers to focus on more complex and creative activities. With calculated decision-making, AI systems can analyze large amounts of data in a flash and spit out insightful little nuggets of wisdom. This feeds into predictive analytics, which is like crunching numbers on a very large scale. Feeding historic and real-time data into machine learning algorithms can anticipate future trends and demands. The use cases for this is just endless. Imagine patterns in buying behavior, geo-targeting, threat identification, and precautionary healthcare services. And at the base of this all is NLP, or natural language processing. ChatGPT probably comes to mind first here. This allows us to interact with AI using real, natural human language in its various forms. And for the accessibility enthusiasts out there, yes, some of these tools can interpret sign language with up to 98% accuracy. What about quality control? By observing real-time user activity, AI can identify pain points as they occur. So far, so good, but we still need to get into the juicy stuff. Generative AI can create and edit content, images, text, and even music and sound clips to your liking. In the audience today in Teams, put your hand up if you've used Dolly, Midjourney, Google's Deep Dream, even Adobe Firefly. I can't see hands, but I'm sure there are quite a few. It's like being unsupervised in a candy store. With near instant visualization at our fingertips, we can create and test ideas in seconds to the hours it would usually take. Excited yet? I know I am. Figma seems to be the first on stage with promises of its simulated support called Genius. This is an AI collaborator that works with you to streamline your creative process, and it helps you to build design systems. With Figma in the lead, we can look forward to similar features in leading apps soon. But hold up. Before you cut down on project costs and delivery estimations, all of this comes at a price. By now, I'm sure the benefits of AI design and productivity tools are pretty clear, so let's talk about the drawbacks. In a rapidly flooding market, self-proclaimed AI tools are popping up like weeds. Not many of them are actually AI as such, and very few of them are worth the squeeze. We're also seeing new trends in misleading marketing. These cover up paywalls and often play on sunk cost fallacy by requesting payments after you've invested time and energy into the products. And as it stands, AI adds complexity to our workflows. It poses the issue of needing an array of third-party tools and plugins to have real impact on productivity and quality. The question of data privacy and intellectual property also comes up. Who has access to the data we feed into newly emerging tools and apps? How may those parties use the data that we give them? And who owns the generated output at the end of the day? That is a rabbit hole I'm not qualified to take you down, but don't overlook these issues. With a healthy level of competition, I hope to see more native in-app AI integrations, allowing us to harness the power of AI from within the trusted apps that we're already using, without having to sign up and switch between different accounts and apps, each with its own price tag and terms of use. Alarmingly, in an unregulated realm, it's never been easier to generate and distribute fake news. And lastly, biases are a real issue too. AI is only as good as the data we give it access to. In an embarrassing attempt at AI facial recognition, a leading software company created an app that routinely misgendered females and people of color, compared to white males who statistically made up the majority of the project team. This is just one example of an enormous problem with misrepresentative data, ranging from legal issues to misdiagnoses in healthcare. But on that heavy note, let's look at the bright side. We get to craft AI experiences. Inclusive and ethical design forms the bedrock of a designer's framework. By including minorities and previously misrepresented user data in our data sets, we don't just level the playing field, we get to support those who need it most. We always have to honor the unspoken design code, which is to serve and protect our users. With interactions extending to conversational and non-visual models, end-to-end user journey mapping and service design gets a chance to shine. This plays on the strengths of user experience and create new opportunities for researchers and writers to complement design teams. AI is disruptive though. It's not just magic dust to sprinkle on existing products. It challenges, dare I say, every organization with a digital touch point to innovate and adapt or fall behind. In this shakeup, designers become the custodians of products that we design. We need to understand the possibilities and constraints of AI as well as the evolving user behaviors. This is just half the battle. We then have to advocate for change, and it's not even to give our products a competitive advantage. It will soon be just to stay relevant. As it stands, I'm not aware of any AI-specific design methodologies. There's definitely a need for it though. So while we tinker these new concepts into the teachings of our beloved Norman and Nielsen, we have to be mindful that all of this is about to change. I think that's a good note to end on. So let's be pioneers of AI in design. Let's embrace the challenges, jump at the opportunities, and show our adaptability and resilience. It's not an option, really. We as a collective civilization are in for the ride of a lifetime. It's up to you to decide if you're going to strap yourself in and enjoy the scenery or fall off at the first sharp corner. What are you going to choose?
Great context setting there, Ray, and I'm going to ask you to maybe go back all the way through to I think your first slide on the design process, and while our audience is also thinking perhaps of their questions, if you don't mind, I might pose a couple myself, because you've tweaked my interest here. I'm excited by AI. I'm hesitant about AI. I am a proponent for it, and I am also one of those people that goes, there's a lot of considerations in terms of risks, ethics, etc. But in terms of the design process, for those folks that are already in the space and in the practice in terms of UX and UI engagement, just in terms of that process, and you don't mind, just bring up the slide so that our audience has reference to it.
Sure.
And again, I'm not a UX UI expert, as are you, but one of the takeaways that I have had from engagements where our team have been there, there's been a lot of references to empathizing with users, really understanding the user experience and their process in terms of engagement with systems, etc. I wonder how you reconcile that, the humanistic element of design work, with now incorporating interaction with effectively mathematical systems that represent that interest. How do you kind of connect those dots and go, it's okay, we can and should do this?
Very good question. Thanks. Design thinking, I think the name is a bit misleading. It is a problem-solving tool. It's not just a tool used by designers, and it's all built around user-centricity. And now, perhaps more than ever, we need to focus on user-centricity and make sure that the products that we build and the AI that we introduce still keep the user's best interest in mind. So hopefully by the automation and the productivity tools that we have available to us now, we can focus more on the users as actual people and less on the mathematics side of it.
Do you see a scenario in the future, though, where the audience person, I should use the air quotes, but we won't do that because everyone hates air quotes, but the audience that you're interviewing and engaging with is actually an AI persona, and that you're now figuring out how to design and work with that persona, and as a consequence of that, perhaps shape the interaction of that solution back with your process and your application?
Definitely. I envision us delving into real user data and creating archetypes and personas based on that data. So it takes a lot of guessing out of the game, and it's a better representation of our actual audience or our actual users. So imagine configuring a user saying, I want to test my application with a user with this set of abilities in this contextual setting with these limitations like slow internet speed, for example. And that user can virtually be created, maybe talk to you even with your face, and test your app. It may not replace user testing altogether, but it would be so brilliant just as a first line of defense. I think it will definitely enhance our product quality as well.
Wow, but I hadn't actually thought of it that way. It's kind of like different tiers of testing that you might now implement. A represented automated version of the typical audience member, and asking the AI to go, give me your feedback in terms of this experience, and then post that, perhaps taking it on into the human validation of that. That sounds very much like the OpenAI training methodology that they use. They go through data training and then they move into human validation of the results on that training. Is that something that kind of resonates with you, Ray, to go that aspect's not going away? I'm asking on behalf of all our human users that are going to go, Ray, you can't simply replace me with some silly AI solution, can you?
If I can use an example here, in car safety tests, we use crash test dummies, not real people, and they absorb the shock and they make the driving experience safer and more convenient to the humans who get to drive the car at the end of the day. I understand that some cars are now self-driving, But in that same sense, we may use the automation to enhance the experience for the end user as a human person. With what you just said, I'd like to add on top of that. So a tool that we use in our persona creation is modular personas. So to make sure that we cover all levels of accessibility and inclusiveness and needs, instead of having different personas for each randomly generated person you can think of, we can use modules to put on top of existing personas. And I see that working the same way when it comes to AI, where you can do an automated test with a person who perhaps fills a certain demographic, and then perform the same test for someone who may be visually impaired to see how that differs to ultimately make the experience better for everyone involved.
So wider coverage in a shorter amount of time with pre-populated persona models that represent different types of user groups. That's a very interesting application of AI there. Wow.
It is.
Along the way, Ray, in terms of what you've experimented with at the moment and what's been available, and to your comment, there's an awful lot that is currently available in the way of tools. And a lot of it seems to still be beta stage in terms of what people are putting out there and putting out there fairly quickly. What have you seen so far that's been really valuable, and what has really been a failure, if anything?
When I started this presentation, I thought in the essence of the topic, delving into AI design, I want to automate this presentation. I wrote a paragraph of text asking various tools to create a presentation for me. And I was deeply disappointed. It basically rephrased the content that I gave it, put it in bullet points, and added a few images on the side, which is perhaps an early application of AI, but that didn't work so well for me. As I mentioned, the paywalls are very misleading. I see a lot of apps claiming to be free. They are not free. Some apps claim to use AI to generate images where they just delve into their existing repository of images. So they detect what you need and they serve you up something that is already existing. Something that I've been enjoying is obviously ChatGPT, and I've started experimenting with Bard. Then I can't remember if it was Dolly or if it was Google's Deep Dream. I created an abstract image, and my prompt was that I want a painting of a cat crossed with an octopus playing with the sands of time, inspired by the style of Salvador Dali. And the rendering was quite impressive. I'm not going to bring it up now. I don't know where I saved it, but I'll be sure to share it afterwards for anyone who's interested. So I feel that it's pushing our creativity, and we're getting to think outside of the box without having to worry too much about how we're practically going to pull out these abstract concepts.
I'm definitely anticipating a number of requests in the chat now to actually see the output of your prompt there, Ray. So I think you better prepare that in order to satisfy our audience. Yeah. Along the way, I guess one of the things that people are going to have to get familiar with is where the application of these tools really will benefit them, and where it may well be something that could negatively influence the, I was going to use the word quality, but perhaps a better word is the completeness of the response. Particularly, I would think within a line of service such as UX and UI design, there is very much, I believe, the need for that connection with the users, being the people that utilize those systems, and consequently being able to, in a humanistic way, interpret and intuit the real sort of bright moments that make that difference, that little spark of innovation, that little spark of differentiation that really makes a difference for people in terms of how they perceive the interaction and how they then internalize that experience. And in saying that, I guess I'm leaning on the side of going, so in what you've seen with the tools that you've used so far, apart from the image generation type of things, the DALIs, the Fireflies, etc., that are coming out and allow somebody to prompt the creation of an image or something that would go into a design process. Do you see that there are dots that are joining that basically take some of the designer's value away in terms of being replaceable by the solutions that are out there? Or is that something that's still down the road from where we are today?
In an optimistic reply, I will say that I definitely don't see AI replacing design. We will have to adapt. As I said, we may focus more on service design or customer experience design, but at the end of the day, AI can only do what we've already done. It can't come up with the creative problem solving. It can't come up with its own prompts. So it is a tool that we can use to our advantage, but it's still going to be driven by the people who carry the vision for a product and also people who understand the process. You have to be able to tell if an auto-generated solution is good or bad and why. That is stuff that can't just be done with a click of a button.
Indeed. And there was that's prompted another bit for me that I think I would ask you to just show. You had it in a slide the other day that you shared with me, and I hadn't seen that before or thought about it that way before. But you showed a slide with the capture screens, and you spoke about that in terms of what lay behind those in terms of intent. I wonder if you wouldn't mind just bringing those up, Ray, and just show those, because I'm hoping that the audience here is going to go, actually, I hadn't anticipated that as being the outcome of what was going on there either. It'll make me feel a lot better about just how stupid I felt post that little conversation.
Definitely, Carl. Let me just see if I can find it, because in a non-maintainable sense, I did delete my old slides, but luckily I see that I sent it to you in an email. So please just hang on, if you don't mind entertaining the audience while I look for it.
Well, this audience is never entertained by anything I have to say. They're always here for you, Ray. But in the interim, I will just remind our audience that if you do have a question for Ray, please raise that in the chat window. I will pick that up from you and I will pose that to Ray as soon as I stop asking these imbecilic questions that I have. Please forgive me, but I don't get much time with Ray during the regular week, so the opportunity to abuse her time and thinking for a whole hour is pretty much unprecedented, and I'm going to make the most of it when I can.
That was an excellent filler. Thank you. I don't have those slides anymore, but I'm going to do my best to just describe it. All right. So, have you ever proven that you are not a robot by entering a few characters in a Google reCAPTCHA form? We all have. What you may not know is by doing that, we were actually, as a collective group, teaching Google how to read. And that was done by Google presenting a string of characters. It knew what all of the characters was, except for one. And then based on the data that it collected from us, the users, it started detecting those patterns so that it can read better. That is an excellent example of machine learning. And how that was fed into AI is by Google scanning books, centuries old, that you can now interact with by talking to it. I think it's called Talk to Books, but it might have been discontinued. Yes, and with that, Google also builds their, what's it called? The scan, Paul, help me? Lens, Google Lens. Google Lens, where you can scan labels and signs in different languages and it translates it instantly and automatically. Us, the users, we taught Google how to do that. It gets even better though. So you may not have seen many of those online anymore because Google knows how to read now, right? What we're currently teaching it is how to drive. You'll see more and more prompts, ironically asking you if you're a robot. You're proving you're not a robot, but in the meantime, you're training the robot. So full circle there. So it's asking you to please identify traffic lights, pedestrian crosswalks, cars, taxis, fire hydrants, and that is directly feeding into Google's self-driving car algorithm.
All right, so I feel I'm going to make myself feel better and go, was anybody else aware that that was an endpoint use of those capture forms? If you knew that, you're amazing. So everyone here actually knew that because you're all amazing. But fortunately, you're also being very kind and not too many hands going up there. Either that or you're choosing not to press the button at the moment, which is also a very valid option. Thank you. Ray, in terms of your image generation use for design purposes, is the output from generative tools like Firefly and others that are out there, is that of sufficient quality to actually be used in commercial design at the moment?
There are 3 points that I want to cover, and I'm hopefully going to remember all 3 of them. Firstly, no. So there are still a lot of issues. You can especially see it if you try to generate photorealistic images. The hands are always off. It's always a bit blurry. Sometimes you have the person on the image has too many eyes. So it has a long way to go there. The second point is that it poses challenges in terms of consistency. If your brand uses line drawings at a 50 pixel border, for example, how can you get these tools to keep on generating images with those exact visual qualities to keep your brand image consistent? That's going to be a very big challenge. I'm unaware if you can feed it information like, please give me a drawing this big with a line width of this much, for example, using these hex colors, 10% yellow, 20% blue. I don't know if it goes into that much detail. Maybe it will at some point, but the way that I experienced it, it's not quite there yet. The third image is that AI uses patterns. It recognizes patterns and it repeats those patterns. It's as simple as that. And we're starting to see a pattern in that. You can now almost immediately tell if something is auto-generated. Just like you can spot a Wix website a mile away, or stock photography screams stock photography. It's coming to a point now where you can immediately spot if something was auto-generated by AI, because it's not that unique. It follows patterns, and those patterns are recognizable.
Where do you think then that the greatest value is going to be added, Ray? Where within the design world, UX and UI, is AI first going to find its sort of niche spot that it goes, this is great, this adds value, this does good things for us?
I believe in tools like XD and Figma and Sketch and everything in that realm. If AI can pick up on our ways of working, detect our patterns as an individual designer with your own processes and your own file structure and your own hierarchy, to pick up on that and help you to generate an entire app based on a few components, that would be absolutely magnificent. So rather than just taking information from anywhere it can find, specifically servicing a professional in their way of working and supporting them in their role.
Okay, I guess that leads into some of the stuff that we are seeing on the code generation side, and the ability to start out applications, even build out full applications based on auto-generated code. And things like auto GPT are certainly linking the dots between different areas. And again, I think you've prompted a bit of a thought in my head going, it's interesting. We've perhaps thought of functional areas in terms of our domains of expertise without thinking about how those now get linked, and you're able to extend your expertise into another area without necessarily being an expert in that space. So as example, UX and UI designers, not just doing clickable prototypes, but building out functional applications with code generation on the AI side that winds up being almost an MVP one of an application solution. Yes. That would be highly efficient and very interesting. And maybe then you have the coders worried about the designers being the new developers, yeah?
I appreciate that you said it can be an MVP one and not a final product. Having worked in front-end development myself and seeing auto-generated HTML and CSS, cringeworthy. So perhaps it's going in the better direction now. Developers will not be replaced either. Interestingly enough, Figma released an update on their dev plugin. I think it's called dev mode, where developers in Visual Studio can install the Figma plugin to start pulling in the image styles directly from there. Once again, I don't know how well that would work with having your standard classes and identities and keeping your files small rather than just copy and pasting over the styles from every component. So there's a lot for us to learn as well. And AI has a lot to learn from us as well.
Certainly. And that probably paints a scenario for the future, which is where there's probably a blurring of the boundaries between the team members in an application project engagement, yeah? So the designers and coders perhaps participating in that process as joint prompt engineers with the design knowledge plus the coding knowledge that would perhaps shape better pieces that come out for that MVP one.
Definitely. I think in a post-pandemic world where we worked remotely for so long, we were forced to start collaborating online. And I see that as a good thing. We're collaborating now more than ever. Designers aren't sitting in the back office anymore doing their creative work and coming back to the table, presenting what they came up with. We have mirror boards where everyone on the team can come, bring their expertise and contribute to the project. So hopefully with AI, more of these barriers will get broken down. And at the end of the day, we'll be one mushy, happy team working together, doing really awesome stuff.
Oh, that's such a human thing to say, happy, mushy family in one space. Connecting that with a question from Joran, Joran asked, do you think we need some kind of process or system to onboard people into using AI? I wonder if you've looked at that with your team, Ray, in terms of going, hey team, this is something you need to pay attention to, and this is where I see us going, and then taking them down that path. How have you approached that?
Jace, excellent question. Yes, we're on it. We have created a SharePoint site that's meant for collaborative sharing within the design team, where we can learn from each other's expertise, ask questions, and stay up to date with whatever we're finding as a collective. So there is currently a page for AI. I'm working on it with a few other designers. It's in very early phases, but it is there. So firstly, what we're busy with now is identifying quality tools to see what the costs are, what the risks are, and to get those approved before we start introducing it and suggesting it to the team to use. So that's when we have to have an in-depth look at stuff like data privacy and intellectual property. What we're also working on is a beginner's guide to prompt engineering that will help you to get the best value out of AI by asking the right questions in the right formats.
So I guess some of the advice there is, yes, jump in, but jump in knowing it's the shallow end, and jump in knowing where the life preserver is, and at the same time that the lifeguard is on duty at the same time, yeah?
Yes, that sounds about right. Jump in with your inflatable wings.
Villiers had an interesting question. He obviously liked your image very much and wanted to know whether you could increase the weirdness on that at the same time. So, De Villiers, the answer is, from an AI point of view, of course, yes. It can always get weirder than what it is. Kind of like a Star Trek thing, yeah. I'm just checking a question. Just checking a question here from Roberto. Roberto happens to be the head of our AI and blockchain practice at DVT. And he is referencing sort of eye tracking and other interfacing methods that are very new and becoming more prevalent in terms of the AI enablement channels. So the conversational aspect has obviously been there in the past through the assistants like Google's Alexa, and then Siri on the Apple side of things in terms of that conversation side of things and instructions to machines. But then there's obviously new things that enable, and in some cases, folks that are disabled, in other cases, not disabled people, but regular folks in terms of how they now engage. Eye tracking to actually look at screens and then interpret the actions, the whole thing with Apple's latest Vision product. I wonder if you're seeing that as a whole new world for designers to be thinking about and going, VR, AR, etc. Those are new channels that are certainly finding their feet now, and with assistance from AI too.
Definitely, Carl. I had to stop myself from adding too much to my presentation because I got really excited about XR as well. So XR, extended reality, is a mixture of virtual reality and augmented reality. It's either a different digital world on its own or a layer on top of your existing world. As you've seen with Apple's incredibly overpriced VR headset, the possibilities are really super exciting there. That is, to an extent, it feeds into the existing designer's role, but we'll definitely need to upskill our teams on audio visual design. And as you said, non-touch or non-computer input registrations, like navigating with your eyes, maybe navigating with your mind one day, and just gestures. So yes, it is super exciting. I don't have a definitive answer for that, but I'm definitely keeping my eye on it.
Indeed, indeed. And Ray's maybe all the way back to basics. So for anybody in the audience that's kind of going, okay, this is my first touch on the AI subject. Thank you very much, Ray, for getting me excited about it. Where would you point somebody at and go, start here and start with this kind of reading or this kind of play space in terms of getting familiar with what's possible and what's relevant in terms of design?
It is a tricky question because it is a very, very young technology. It's only really been around for a few months. And already we have ambitious YouTubers claiming to be experts on AI. So I would be wary of where you're getting your information from. Roberto in the audience here is our AI guru. So firstly, I would say follow him and follow us on Instagram. Not Instagram, what's it? LinkedIn, the professional one. Because we post regular content there and also try to be ahead of the curve. Other than that, I would just get your hands dirty. See what apps you can get for free, what images you can generate, see how ChatGPT works. People are doing very interesting things with ChatGPT, asking it to repeat back questions, and it becomes a whole conversation. Rather than just prompting one sentence, it's a back and forth to render the best results at the end of the day. But you have to start doing it to get comfortable with it. You can consume all the information, all the articles, all the videos you want. You have to actually open it up and be like, hey, ChatGPT, tell me about dinosaurs. Whatever rocks your boat.
Well, I'll add to that a personal anecdote. The extent to which the technology is capable is one that my daughter at university has used in order to have biochemistry explained in the style of a RuPaul Drag Race episode. And I went, what on earth are you doing? And she goes, it's just more entertaining that way. So consequently, it worked. And she said, no, it made absolute sense. And it was done in a fashion that was actually enjoyable to do, as opposed to the dry nature of the subject. And it kind of has led me down the path of going, it can't be far away, or it's probably there already from a design point of view to take something that is a fairly dry subject, perhaps in terms of a channel and a delivery process to an audience, and go, spice this up, make it more fun, make it more entertaining. Do you see that happening already, Ray, or are we stretching when we kind of give us the insight and spark and creativity?
This is my personal opinion. It feels like we have military grade technology available to us, and what we're doing with it is creating AI avatars of our pets and asking it to please set the timer for 20 minutes while my pasta is boiling. So the possibility is there. It's very early days. We are just playing around at this point. It's like little building blocks, and we're getting used to it, and it's getting used to us. So at the moment, I'm not seeing much in that regard, but it's definitely in the pipeline once we found our feet.
Okay, better check on that. All right, haven't seen anything else. Monique, question from Monique, Ray, is where do we draw the line of overusing AI in UX design, and what ethical considerations, sorry, lost that for a moment, what ethical considerations should we keep in mind?
Yes, excellent question. I remember way back when we first got, what were those horrible icons in Word called? Clip art. We first got clip art, and it was amazing, and everyone started using clip art, and then it became very much frowned upon. Same thing with stock photography. It served its purpose in a place and time, but very soon it was overused, and it became just bad practice to overuse stock photography, or at least the stock photography that looks like stock photography. I think with UX and AI, there may be a point where those patterns also become less desired. It's really hard to say. I'm hypothesizing at the moment. But with the ethics of it, definitely. I lost my train of thought. When it comes to ethics, we need to keep the user front and center. So obviously protecting their best interests when it comes to data privacy and, well, anything that we do on our products. Perhaps a good connection point for that would be the ability of AI to interpret really, really complex contracts. Instead of just saying, I agree to the large body of text, you may ask a natural language processing like ChatGPT to summarize that into a few bullet points so that you can better understand what you're agreeing to. So in terms of ethics, there are upsides. Things can get better, but they can also get worse. So it is up to us to drive the change.
Ray, in the aspect of applying AI as part of solutions, right? And I was just, again, sorry, you're prompting ideas on my side, and consequently I'm putting you on the spot as a result. In the context of, say, an application that does present terms and conditions, do you see a scenario before long where the AI integration is either sitting alongside somebody as a personal assistant or as part of a function of an application? So I visit a website and there's the T's and C's. And alongside the T's and C's is explain the T's and C's to me and the risks in a simple fashion. Give me the 5 points that I need to know. Do you see that as coming into design as part of how we do things? So it could be one, the provision of that kind of service from the actual site itself, or alternatively, as the personal assistant sitting alongside me, and consequently, from a designer's point of view, you needing to know that your audience is an enhanced person in that it's both them plus their personal assistant, and the combination of those two is now your new user.
That is thought-provoking. I don't have the answer for that, but it's, yes. That sparked another idea. So in terms of including minorities, this is maybe a good case for not just translating terms and conditions and difficult to understand content into easier terms, but also languages that's not catered for or not accommodated. I see here that I didn't answer Megan's question. Carl, can you perhaps just help with that?
Sure, I'll pick that up. All right, sorry, just tracing your question here, Megan. I might be scrolling past it.
She's asking, if we use DALL-E or Midjourney, who is the owner of the images? We touch on that briefly with data privacy and intellectual property. I gave you a very open answer saying that we need to be mindful of it. Those are definitely concerns. I don't know who owns those images at the moment, whether it is the person who generated, the public, the service that you generated from, and at what point they may revoke your use of it. So there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, Megan, we delved into those questions the other day, and in some of it, there's only guidance to be provided in that one, you should carefully consider the terms and conditions in terms of what you sign up for with the new tool sets. In particular, you'll find that many, and as example within Firefly on the Adobe side, the cautionary piece there is that you may not use any of the generative output for commercial purposes. So you may use it for your own purposes, but you may not use it for commercial purposes. And I think in part, that's the protection against the consideration of generative content that comes out that is perhaps then derivative of somebody else's original work and consequently actually requires licensing from the original work still, because derivatives are still considered as subject to the copyright of the original work, even if it is different, even if it is not obviously the same. So there certainly are legal considerations around the content itself. It might well be a case that the safest thing to do at the moment is use the capabilities as an idea generator and refiner before producing an original work yourself that you then own and can show the creation of that work. But I think in this space, it's still very unclear as to the full licensing implications of using generative tools like that. Be careful. The answer probably is best. Be careful. Yeah.
Carl, can I ask you questions?
Oh no, I know nothing about UX and UI.
We're flipping this around. With all the image generation going around, all of those images need to be stored somewhere. They need to be hosted. And with people whipping up websites with a click of a button, auto-generating content and images to put on those websites, what does that mean for the internet as we know it? It's being flooded by information. Is it good information? Is it bad information? Is it relevant? Is it just fluff? What's happening?
Oh, well, I think since day one of the internet, it's probably been a case of it's not always used for the best purposes, but it is used to prompt creativity, and the process itself probably has merit. We learn from that process, right? And the fact that many little cat videos are stored on YouTube has probably pushed YouTube to optimize video technologies to go, how on earth do we store this many kitten pictures, right? So
that's what the
there's
internet
always
is
spin-off
for.
benefits that, yeah, there's spin-off benefits that come from the use of the technology, and the refinement of the technology comes along with us looking at it and creative people like you and others coming up with greater demands on it to go, well, I don't just want kitten pictures, I want X, Y, and Z, and look what I can do with the following. And if you give me the following capability, I can do the following things. So I'm always in favor perhaps of the libertarian approach, which goes, play, try, do. It might seem like rubbish at the moment or might not seem to have significant value, but there'll be learning, and learning is always at its heart the thing that we should be after and looking at trying to promote and do and share. One of the best use cases, I think, out of AI at the moment is the teaching assistant and the teaching customization that's possible with the tech, enabling tutors for kids online, enabling tutors for kids in classrooms. I saw recently there was an announcement that some of the top universities across the UK had kind of reversed position on the use of AI, and we're now fully incorporating the use of AI tools into the curriculum of what they were doing and preparing their students for the use of those tools, and even going as far as going, the generation of content out of the tools is totally acceptable, provided it's done within the parameters of the ethical considerations, copyright considerations, and original thought. There's absolutely nothing wrong with using highly efficient, highly capable tools, provided we're not subjugating original thought to the process. That would be a terrible thing if people suddenly go, I don't need to think about this, I don't need to be creative, I don't need to do anything, I just need to ask the tool. No, you're all valuable, you're all unique individuals, and that's something that AI can't replace. That was my very long diatribe answer to your simple question is, what about all those things? And I should have just gone, I don't know, Ray, what do you think?
To touch on what you just said, I really appreciate that there are educational institutions that cater for AI and actually encourage it. It's not going to go away. And the kids in school today won't have the same type of jobs that we have as adults today. So the pressure is on the schools to start adapting as well, to prepare them for a future that's going to look very, very different from what we see today.
Absolutely. It is already different, and ignoring it is not going to do you any good. You'll need to come back to the fact that it is there, it is valuable, it's powerful and useful. But like anything, it is a tool, and you need to understand the tool and the capability of the tool and use the tool to its best abilities. And that's what I think everybody's after. Just checking to see if there are any other questions that we have. If not, I'm going to say, wow, thanks first. Ray, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your opinion and insights in the design space and the impact of AI and where it's going for designers and others. I think it's been most helpful in terms of at least prompting some new thinking on my side. Thank you. And for an old person, that's always a novel experience. On your side, any last words closing out for us today?
Just thank you to everyone who joined us today. I tried to channel my nerves through excitement. I am loving everything that's happening in AI and trying to stay on top of it, but it's a daunting task. Carl, you've been a lovely co-host. Can we get hands if Carl and I start a podcast? Who will subscribe?
No one, Ray. No one.
Thank you. Thank you. Linker will. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. This was delightful.